In today's world, it is becoming more and more common for people to transition or shift between Ifa mentors, guides, spiritualists, diviners, priests, priestesses, godparents, and things of that nature. This is very common, especially in the diaspora, simply because so many different people are trying to find their way into the tradition, so they pretty much have to feel people out. It can be something that's difficult to do. This is probably the most challenging part in integrating into any African tradition, is finding the right spiritualist to take care of your spiritual needs. With that being the case, we do see a lot of shifting and things of that nature with godparents and high-level mentors or guides for people who want to come into the Ifa tradition. This is not something that is as common in Nigeria, simply because of the nature of how many people in Yoruba land integrate into the tradition. They're typically born into it, so they come in with an established priest or priestess who's been working with their family line for so many generations, especially when you're talking about a lineage of priests and priestesses is what I mean. I'm not saying that the Ifa priest or priestess is like really old or something, but instead usually there's a family line or a family connection between the spiritualists, and they typically take care of the same family lines within the tradition, so whoever wants to practice. So it is like pretty much like you being born and raised in a church or into a certain mosque or what have you, or temple or whatever it may be, and you kind of stick with that until your adulthood years, and oftentimes you may stay in that particular church system or what have you for the entirety of your life. Now, it is becoming more and more common for people to shift with that dynamic as well, because of movements and of course changing of beliefs and ideologies and so forth and so on. So we are seeing that much greater shift happening in the diaspora, and I do want to come here and talk about this subject because it's very, very important for you to navigate these transitions very effectively, because certain things can actually happen to you if you don't transition well when it comes to your Ifa godparent especially, but also other people who are instrumental in helping you along your Ifa journey. First, let me clarify what I mean by godparents, mentors, guides, etc. So a godparent is somebody who actually initiates you into the tradition. This is a higher level individual that you're working with. That means that you have gone through a very, very sacred ceremony with this particular spiritualist, and you have a deep bond with them. It's almost like a parent in the real world. The same way, you don't just easily sever that connection unless there's reason to do so. The same notion pretty much applies to an Ifa godparent or spiritualist in any regard, whatever tradition that you're practicing. Of course, herein I'm focusing on Ifa in this episode. Now, a mentor or a guide, it can be a spiritualist. It absolutely can be an Ifa priest or priestess, but it can also be someone else within the tradition who is helping you along, guiding you, teaching you, and equipping you with the knowledge that you have. And so when I say mentor, this is somebody that you usually spent quite a bit of time with in training and learning about the tradition, even so, like maybe they're doing divination work for you, etc. A diviner is somebody that maybe you just come to and seek out a reading. This could be one time, this could be multiple times. But the gist here is the longer that you spend time with an individual in this regard and you establish a connection, you definitely want to sever that connection properly before moving on, because you want to ensure that your journey through the path of Ifa is solid. Now, typically when we're talking about like just a diviner or somebody like that, especially that you just went to maybe once or twice, it's not as serious, right? If you've not established a strong bond with that person. But I would say if you've had consistent communication with an individual for about 3 or 4 months, then you've established a pretty sound connection there. And so you definitely want to listen up when it comes to severing such ties and, exiting this relationship in a proper manner. Now, it's no shade to you regardless of why you want to sever such a connection. There are many, many reasons why you may want to do so. I am definitely one to say you should be with somebody who you resonate with. You should not go into a connection or relationship with a spiritualist just because you want to practice Ifa. It should be a good fit. And sometimes it takes time for that to happen. It may not be the first person that you work with, and that is perfectly fine. It's actually perfectly normal. It's similar to going out dating, right? So you usually don't marry the first person that you're with. Some people do. Yes, some people marry their long-time high school sweetheart, or some people have been with this person since elementary school, and that is their forever mate, and that is great as well. But it doesn't pan out that way for the average person. So if you're in a situation where you feel like it is best to not continue with that individual, no matter how far the relationship or the connection has gone, you should definitely leave. But there are ways to do this to help you out so that you can avoid some critical mistakes, and you can also avoid some possible issues that come along with not doing this the right way. Okay, so if you feel like your beliefs are misaligned with this individual, you just don't feel like you have that strong connection, right? If there are ethical concerns with that person not doing the right things in the right way, as I mentioned before, very common. There are geographical constraints, especially when working with someone outside of your local geographical region. There can also be financial concerns in many regards. So it could be a constraint whereby the person is charging more than what you can afford. That doesn't make the person wrong for charging what they charge. It's just simply this is what they charge, and another person may charge something more affordable for you, and it makes sense for you to transition to someone when that is the case. Definitely making sure though that the other person is providing you with sound services. Even so, because I've talked about it as well in my previous experience, like the other Bible was charging me a whole lot less, and I came to find out that those were not standard prices for it both. So I really don't know what he was doing. Maybe just to show me that he did something. He was taking my money and not really doing things according to tradition. But fortunately I learned better and I transitioned out of that situation properly. But it can also be financial concerns in that way. Like I said, like maybe they're charging you too little and you feel like something is wrong here. It could be so many different things. Maybe you've outgrown a person, what have you. Maybe you just want to see what it's like working with someone else. You could actually be okay with the initial person that you started working with. However, it may come a situation where you feel like you want to seek out other perspectives to see how someone else is doing it, to make sure that you're on the right track, or just to kind of compare and contrast. Okay. Maybe you guys get into some kind of conflict or problem. That happens. We're humans. That's how it goes sometimes. Or sometimes you just intuitively know this connection is not the best one for me. I need to move on. So many reasons, guys. This is not to condemn anybody if they want to transition to another practitioner, another godparent, mentor guide, or what have you. You should definitely do so if you feel led to do so. But what is important is for you to absolutely be honest and open in communicating this to the person when it is applicable. There are times where you may not be able to do so, or that you even shouldn't do so, depending on the nature of the relationship and the situation that you have. But in general, you want to compare this to something like resigning from a job. We are taught whenever we want to resign or leave a job, what do? We put in a letter of resignation. Most companies have like a notice period that you should give them. And whenever you leave, there are certain things you need to do to transition. You may have to give them back any of their property like IDs or laptops or anything, keys, etc., that belong to the company. Likewise, you may need to get a severance check or something of that nature, but there are processes that need to occur where in general the relationship should not abruptly end, right? Number one, you need to do this simply because you're dealing with another human. Ifa is all about, community and handling things in a balanced and a harmonious way, because we want to maintain balance and harmony in our lives. And in order to do so, we want to keep an even keel with other people. We don't want to go in and do things in a disruptive, disrespectful fashion, which can cause issues for us in the long run. That person that you're dealing with is just that. That's a person, that's a human, somebody with feelings. So, regardless of your reasons, even if it's not something that you may consider to be like a good reason, in their eyes it's a good reason for you, but like in their eyes, especially if it's a situation with finances or what have you, you should still try to communicate with that person as far as you leaving them. You don't always have to tell them why. It may come up, it may not, right? If it's a spiritualist with a lot of experience, they're probably used to people leaving. But, just be courteous and say, hey, I'm going to transition from working with you at this point. You don't have to give too much details, but just be courteous enough to tell them what's going on with you, right? You also want to do this in the right time and in the right place. Timing is essential. This is going to be very, very relative based on your situation. But I definitely recommend it being outside of any major spiritual work that you have done. So if you just finished doing a reading and an EBO, maybe give it a space of 2 or 3 weeks or something like that. Or if you're in the middle of that process, maybe you just got a reading and you're about to have an EBO performed. Or even if you got a reading and you say, hey, I don't want to do this EBO with this individual, right? Especially if there are financial concerns there. If it's like too much money for you, you should still respectfully bow out and just say, I can't do my EBO right now because it is too expensive, and then let that person know that, I might want to seek services elsewhere because your services are, more than I can financially bear right now. If you want to say that, you don't have to. Also, let it be done properly. In my opinion, in person is best, right? If that can happen. Of course, if you're working with somebody remotely, that's not possible. So maybe even doing a video call with that individual, if that is a common form of communication with you guys. If not, at least try to do it over the phone. Maybe even submitting a formal email to them. Texting would be my last resort, but if this is something that's common among you, then you can do that likewise. To me, it's just informal. I came up in a whole different era, but do what works best for you there. You try your best to express gratitude for the work that the person has done for you. Okay, especially if we're talking about a mentor or a guide, somebody who has done more than just your ritual work. Even then, you should be grateful that somebody was doing ritual work for you, especially if it was achieving something for your good. You should still be grateful even if you were paying for it. But especially in situations where a person has been available to you to provide guidance, and usually that's done, free, especially when you are working with someone consistently. You're going to bounce questions and things like that off of them, and you're going to get a whole lot of guidance. So you want to definitely be grateful for all of the things that that person has been there for, right? Absolutely. You want to be respectful regardless of the reason. Even if it's a reason where you feel like they're at fault, still try to keep it respectful. Remain calm. All right. Again, this goes with the notion of if there's some upset or frustration or things like that involved, just try to remain calm, and also, set forth boundaries for how the relationship will continue or not continue thereafter. Okay. And, also going back to the part about being calm or what have you, that also comes with doing this in the right timing, right? So you don't want to be angry or upset when you go to have this conversation with this individual. Instead, you want to try to be cool, calm, and collective. So maybe wait it out 3 or 4 days if you can before you approach them with such a conversation, or even if it's a text message or an email or something like that. Still wait so that you're not heated when you bring this message to the individual. So when it comes to establishing boundaries, you want to make sure that you maintain a safe distance with this individual, especially if there are things that, conflict or things like that are involved in the scenario between you and the person. Okay. Likewise, you want to be respectful of that individual, because sometimes when people do several connections with their godparent or mentor or what have you, they oftentimes want to still lean on that person for information and guidance, but yet they want to seek out services from someone else. And that is a form of disrespect, guys. So if you are deciding to go with someone else, you go and you work with that individual. You, establish that boundary where you're not going to continue to lean on that person for guidance and advice. If you decide that you want to sever ties with them, okay? I mean, of course, if they maintain information in a public forum, like maybe a Facebook page, Instagram, a website, or what have you, right? That's public information. You can absolutely continue to consume that because they put it out there for everyone. And if, they're providing you with useful content and information, why not continue to consume it? But just be mindful to be respectful of that individual, and don't continuously seek out information from them if you're not willing to pour things back into them. Because remember, spirituality is about reciprocity. It is give and take. So that's important as well. Another part of this too is bitterness going on within the connection, and it's especially from the other person's end. You may have to stop taking calls or receiving text messages or any form of contact from them, especially if they're hostile or they're harassing you or something like that, because that can happen. You understand that? And that also goes along with that dynamic that I was talking about before. If it's okay to have these open and honest conversations with the individual, absolutely do so. But if it's not, there may be situations where you just have to, block the individual or ghost the individual if they're causing major trauma and scenarios and situations in your life. And if that is the case, I would strongly advise you, to go and get you some type of spiritual protection, because you don't know what that person's mindset is and, what they plan to do thereafter. So it may be a situation where you need to cut off all contact with the individual, but it could also be a situation where you can continue to have a very cordial relationship with that person thereafter. This is why I encourage this open dialogue, because when it is had, then you can establish or maintain a really strong connection without anybody's feelings being hurt or someone feeling offended or something like that, if you do it in the right way. And there are many, many reasons why you should end this connection diplomatically, if at all possible. There's a such notion as the circle of life, right? Things go around, they come around. You never know when you will need that person in the future. Okay, you might need them for spiritual work specifically, especially if you're tying a connection and it is not based on the quality of their work. It could be based on some of those other dynamics that I mentioned earlier, like maybe you just wanting to compare them with someone else, or maybe you were just seeking out greater personal growth or something of that nature. So it is not something related specifically to what the individual did, because you're transitioning to someone else, and it may be a situation where the new person that you're transitioning to may not be offering you as quality work or services as the other person. Or even so, something could happen with that new connection that you establish. Even if they are offering you quality work, there could be so many dynamics or things that go on in that situation. So, it may be that you need to kind of trail back and deal with your previous spiritualist, especially if things are not going well or properly in the new connection. Likewise, guys, you could end up having to circle back around to that person in the future in a completely different context that you weren't even thinking about. So it could come a time where you end up, maybe working somewhere else, and that person is like your supervisor or something like that. Just because they're spiritualists, especially when we're talking about here, like in America, other parts of the diaspora, it's common for Ifa priests and priestesses to work other jobs along with their spiritual work. All of them are not 100% full time. So it could be a situation where you end up meeting them in a completely different context. They could, take a job at where you're currently working and become your supervisor, right? How would that feel? You may end up getting healthcare services from them at some point. As I just stated, some of them work regular jobs, so that could be actually in healthcare, right? So it could be a dentist, it could be a medical doctor, nurse, or what have you, where you encounter that person and they're actually treating you, right, as a patient. So you want to be careful there. It could be in the context of someone administering some type of life-saving services for you in an emergency situation, and you don't know when you will ever encounter this particular dynamic. And it may not even be in the context of them being in healthcare. It could just be out on the street somewhere, right? And that person maybe has to administer CPR or something like that to you, etc. There are so many different ways that you may end up experiencing this person again, especially if you left the connection in a wrong way. All right, you were at fault for not ending that connection properly. There is a such thing as reciprocity. The universe may step in and say, hey, you are going to have to confront this situation because you didn't leave this dynamic in the right way. So definitely consider that. Another part of this is the person could become very angry or upset with you, and not necessarily them going after revenge or something like that. Their spirit could actually decide to avenge you. So in spirituality, there are some people who have very, very strong spirits, whether it be their Ori or their Orishas or what have you, who guard and protect them. And this is even irrespective of them doing like major level spiritual work. There are some people who can get really angry with you and they don't even go out and try to do anything against you, and things will just happen if you did something wrong to that person. And even some situations, you don't even have to be wrong, okay? But if you do something to that individual and they have a really hot spirit and a hot temper, their energy can go after you and cause you some major issues in life. This is one of the reasons why it is so very important for us to just exercise diplomacy in life in any regard, because we never know exactly who we are dealing with. And there are people who have spirits that can take you down really, really deeply, and you won't even know what's coming at you. You'll just, in that moment when you're experiencing certain grief, you will remember that person and you will know that's that person's spirit coming after you, and they just may be angry in the background and never really try to do anything. On the flip side of that, in some of the most severe situations, that person can get angry with you and decide to, go and do some type of black magic or juju against you, using their spiritual power in the wrong way. remember, you're dealing with a spiritualist here, or even if it's a situation of a mentor or a guide, you are dealing with somebody who has high level spiritual knowledge. And some people are not so ethical with what they do, especially when we're talking about severing ties from people who are unethical. In even situations where they weren't, it's just, hey, they could get really upset, especially if they've done a lot of things for you to help you out throughout your journey, and you decide to not sever their connection properly. They could say, okay, well, I'm going to do something. I'm going to go and actually do some magic work to cause this person some issues, and it could absolutely work against you. So you definitely need to be careful with that. This reminds me of a situation of a Baba that I know who had done some ritual work for someone on credit. Like, it was a long time client of his, 2-3 years or something like that. Plus, he had been working with this particular individual, and so he did some work on credit for him. And his client decided not to pay him back and kind of ghosted him when he was, saying, hey, I need my money back. And of course, he didn't come back for spiritual services because he knew he owed the Baba money. And so the Ifa priest got really, really upset after so long, and he was contemplating doing some magic against him to cause this person problems. But his friends calmed him down and was like, no, don't do it this way. Ifa will take care of it, so forth and so on. And so he calmed down, and he did not go and do the work that he had intended to do. And a few months went past, and it came that this person ended up coming back to him, his client that is, and like begging him for forgiveness because he thought that he had did something to him. Because what happened is the client ended up losing like 2 or 3 times the amount that he owed the Baba in some kind of way. I don't know the specifics of that situation, but he ended up losing so much money, and he thought that the priest was the one who was causing these issues. And so he did end up paying the priest back, and after that they went their separate ways. But you definitely don't just mess with people with high level spiritual knowledge or prowess, or anybody for that matter, because as I said, there's some people who are very, very powerful spiritually, and you don't even know. You just mess with them, and they may not even be practicing anything, and you do the wrong thing to them, and their spirits come after you like thunder and lightning, and then you have so many problems when you shouldn't have. You should act like a respectful human being, especially when you're calling yourself practicing spirituality. It's all about establishing those communal ties and connections and staying strong and powerful within the context of social order. So we should do the right thing here. Herein, I'm going to go ahead and conclude this episode. I didn't intend for it to be as long as it was, but Spirit had a lot to say, because this is a very important dynamic here. So if you are thinking about, exiting a relationship with your mentor, your guide, your godparent, spiritualist, or what have you, guys, make sure you do it in the right way. Make sure you do it in a sound, effective way. Also, guys, be sure to check out Asani44.com for more information about the Ifa tradition. Likewise, check out our divination services, our different products and services that we offer. We do a lot of ritual work, and we also offer different things where you can order directly from the website and get it shipped to you. Reach out to us if you have any questions about our products and services. With that being said, Ashe, please have a very blessed and beautiful day and beyond.